This is my story about what my own son did to me. I gave him everything since he was born. I worked day and night so he could have good things. I thought when I got old he would be kind to me. But one day at lunch, I asked if I could have more soup, and he did something terrible. He threw cold water right in my face. Everyone in the room saw it happen. Nobody said anything to stop him. I didn't cry or yell. I just got up, walked to my bedroom and started making a plan. You won't believe what I did after that. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching Granny's Voice. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Lisa from Columbia, South Carolina. Thank you for being part of our family. No, let me tell you everything. I didn't grow up with money or nice things. When I was a little girl, I had to help my family by doing small jobs. I washed clothes for neighbors when I was only 10 years old. I cleaned houses and helped sell vegetables at the market. I never got to play much because I was always working. Money was hard to get and food was sometimes not enough. When I grew up and had my baby boy, I made a big promise to myself. I promised that my son would never feel hungry like I did. I promised he would go to school and have shoes that fit. I promised he would sleep in a warm bed every night. I didn't care if I had to work until my hands hurt. I didn't care if I couldn't buy things for myself. As long as my son had what he needed, I was happy. I remember buying his first school uniform. It was blue and white, and he looked so handsome in it. I didn't eat breakfast for many days so I could save enough money to buy it. I would come home from work so tired that my legs would shake. But when I saw him smile with his new books, I felt strong again. I paid for his school every month, even when the price went up and I had less money for other things. I would buy cheaper food for myself, but I never bought cheaper things for him. When he wanted a toy bicycle, I sold my gold earrings that my mother gave me. Those earrings were special to me, but seeing my son happy was more special. Later, when he got bigger and wanted his own motorcycle, I gave him money I had been saving for years. That motorcycle cost more than anything I ever bought for myself. But I didn't mind because he was my son and I loved him. When my son got married, I helped pay for the wedding party. My husband and I didn't have much money, but we wanted our son's wedding to be beautiful. We wanted people to see that our son was important and loved. I even helped him pay for his first apartment after he got married. I told him, "This is for you and your wife to start your family." I didn't tell him that the money came from what I was saving for when I got old. I thought it was okay because I believed he would help me when I needed him. I thought children always take care of their mothers when they get old. I thought love in a family goes both ways. I put his name on my bank accounts because I wanted him to learn about money. I thought if he saw his name next to mine, he would be proud and careful with the money. I thought it would remind him that everything I worked for was for him. But I was wrong. Instead of being thankful, he started acting like everything was already his. He started spending money without asking me. He bought expensive things for himself and his friends. When I asked him to save some money, he would say, "Don't worry, Mama. I know what I'm doing." He didn't know that those bank accounts still belonged to me by law. He thought because his name was there, the money was his. I worked my whole life for him. I gave him everything. I believed that when I got old and weak, my son would be good to me. I thought he would say, "Mama, you worked enough. Now I will take care of you." That was my dream. That dream helped me keep working when my body hurt. That dream made me happy when I carried heavy bags in the rain. That dream gave me hope when I was tired and cold. I cleaned offices at night. I cooked food to sell at the market. I fixed broken things for people. Every coin I earned, I saved for my son's future. My whole life became about giving him everything. I was proud to be the mother who gave so much. When my neighbors said I was spoiling my son too much, I didn't listen to them. When my husband told me I should keep some money for myself, I told him not to worry because our son would love us back one day. But I was so wrong. What I thought was love turned into something bad. What I thought was making him strong made him selfish instead. What I thought was family turned into pain. When I think about it now, I can see the truth clearly. Every time I gave him something, he just wanted more. Every time I did something nice for him, he expected bigger things next time. I stopped being his mother and became like a servant to him. But I didn't see it happening because I loved him too much. At that time, before that terrible day when he threw water on me, I still hoped he would change. I still thought if I was patient and kind, he would remember I was his mother. I thought if I stayed quiet and didn't complain, he would feel grateful for what I did. I was so wrong. The bad behavior started slowly. At first, it was small things that I almost didn't notice. Then it got worse and worse. The way he talked to me changed. He would answer me with short words and not look at me when I spoke. I used to sit in the living room and tell him stories about when he was little. But he would look at his phone and act bored. He would say, "Yes, Mama, I know. You told me that story before." He didn't see my stories as important. He thought they were boring. I thought maybe he was just busy with work. Maybe he was stressed and tired. So I made excuses for him in my mind. But slowly, it became clear that he didn't see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as a problem. When I asked him to help me with small things, he would make big sighs like I was bothering him. If I needed him to drive me to the doctor, he would complain about using gas for the car. This was the same car I helped him buy. If I asked him to buy my medicine from the store, he would act like I was asking for too much. The food in the house, which I gave money to buy, became something he complained about. He would say things like, "Do you really need to eat that much?" Or, "You eat more than the children do." It hurt my heart so much because I remembered nights when I didn't eat so he could have food. Now my own son was counting how much rice I put on my plate. When I needed money for my medicine and asked him to help me, he would say mean things like, "I'm already letting you live here for free." I wanted to tell him that I helped pay for this house. I wanted to remind him that I worked hard so he could have a home. But I kept quiet because I thought arguing with my son would push him away from me. He liked to tell neighbors and family that he was taking care of his old mother. He would talk loudly about how I lived in his house and how he paid for everything. He would say these things like he was doing something very special and kind. I never told anyone the truth. I never said that I was still giving him money every month. I didn't want other people to know we had problems. But inside my heart I was breaking into pieces. His wife was mean to me too. She learned to be mean from watching him. If I sat in the living room for too long, she would turn off the television and say she needed quiet time. If I left my slippers by the door, she would make an angry face and say I was making the house messy. One time I was coughing at night because I was sick, and she yelled from her bedroom, "Old people should go to old people's homes, not disturb families." My son heard her say this. He didn't tell her to be kind to me. Instead, he laughed. That was when I knew the respect was completely gone. He started making fun of my old body. My knees hurt when I sit down and sometimes I make a small noise. He would copy that noise in front of his friends to make them laugh. He would hold his back and groan loudly like he was making fun of me. Everyone would laugh except me. I would sit there feeling so small and hurt. I asked myself, is this the baby I carried? Is this the little boy I loved so much? But there was no answer that made sense. His pride and meanness only got bigger. When I tried to remind him of the things I did for him, he would interrupt me and say, "Stop talking about the past. You did what mothers are supposed to do. This is my life now." I was no longer the mother who built his life. I was just an old woman in the corner of the room. He complained about everything. He complained about the grocery bill, about the electricity I used, about my medicine, even though I gave him money from my pension every month. He talked like every dollar I needed was stealing from him. He forgot about the millions I spent raising him. Sometimes he would say, "You're lucky I don't make you pay rent." I wanted to scream, "You're living in a house I helped build." But I kept the words inside. Being quiet became my way of protecting myself. I thought being quiet was being strong. I thought if I was patient, things would get better. But being patient only made him more mean. My son started acting like he was the boss and I was his servant. He would tell me what to do in a bossy voice. "Close that window. Turn off that light. Don't sit in that chair. Every command reminded me that I had no respect in this house anymore. Even my grandchildren started copying the way their father talked to me. They saw how he treated me and they learned from him. They would laugh when I walked slowly. They would ignore me when I tried to talk to them. It wasn't their fault. They were just children copying what they saw. But it hurt so much to see even the little ones lose respect for me. I carried all this pain in silence. But inside I was burning with anger and sadness. I remembered the nights I worked 2 jobs so he could have toys at Christmas. I remembered when I sold my only gold ring to pay for his school trip. I remembered all the battles I fought alone, all the tears I cried when he was sleeping, just to give him a good life. And now this same son treated me like I owed him something. The respect was gone. The dignity I thought would come when I got old never came. Instead, there was meanness, pride, and laughing at me. I told myself this was my fault. Maybe I gave him too much. Maybe I never taught him to work hard. Maybe I should have been stricter. I thought love would teach him to be grateful, but instead it taught him to be greedy. Every time I tried to talk to him about it, he would dismiss me. Every time I tried to explain how I felt, he would silence me. I was no longer his mother in his eyes. I was a burden, someone annoying like an old piece of furniture taking up space. These small moments of disrespect were warnings. They were signs of something worse coming. But I ignored the signs. I kept hoping until one day came when the disrespect became so big that I couldn't ignore it anymore. That day changed everything. It was a normal afternoon, nothing special about it. I remember it clearly because ordinary days often hide the moments that change your whole life. We all sat down to eat lunch together. His wife made rice and chicken, and the children were playing instead of eating properly. I sat quietly in my usual chair, waiting for everyone to take their food first before I took mine. I had learned not to reach for food first because whenever I did, people would look at me with annoyance. So I waited patiently. When the bowls came around to me, I put a small amount on my plate. Just enough, not too much. I ate slowly and quietly. My stomach is smaller now than when I was young, but that day, after finishing what I had, I was still hungry. I looked and saw there was still food left in the bowls. So I said politely, "Can I please have a little more soup?" It was such a simple question. A mother should be able to ask for more food in her son's house without being afraid. But the room became silent. My son's face changed. He looked angry, like I had said something terrible. He didn't speak at first. He just grabbed the glass of water that was next to his plate. Before I could understand what was happening, he leaned forward and threw the water right at my face. The cold water hit me like a slap. My shirt got soaked. My face was dripping. The soup on my plate was ruined. I sat frozen, staring at him, hoping this was a bad joke. But it wasn't a joke. His eyes were cold and his mouth was tight with anger. He said, "That's enough. Stop acting like a queen in my house." My hands shook as I wiped my face with a cloth napkin. The children stared with big eyes, not knowing if they should laugh or be scared. His wife giggled nervously, trying to make the moment feel less serious, but her eyes showed she didn't care about me at all. It felt like everyone at the table had turned against me. My heart didn't break because of the water. Water dries. Clothes dry. But when your dignity is washed away in front of your family, it never comes back. I sat there feeling so humiliated. I couldn't move. I couldn't protect myself. I thought about all the times I went hungry so he could eat. I thought about the scars on my hands from working hard for him. I thought about all the years of work that built the roof over his head. And there I was, treated like a beggar asking for scraps. I didn't yell at him. I didn't throw water back at him. I didn't curse or storm out. I just sat in silence, letting the water drip down my face, into my shirt, onto the floor. My son went back to eating like nothing happened. That silence was heavier than any scream I could have made. It was the silence of a mother realizing her son no longer saw her as his mother. The lunch table felt like a courtroom where I had been punished without anyone defending me. Every bite he took after throwing water at me reminded me that he saw me as less than him. I looked at my grandchildren who were whispering to each other and smiling at what happened like it was funny. That hurt me more than the water. They were learning that it was okay to be mean to their grandmother. They were learning that my dignity meant nothing. I wanted to stand up and leave, but my legs felt too heavy. I stayed in my seat until everyone finished eating. Nobody gave me more food. Nobody said sorry. When the plates were taken away, I stood up slowly with my wet shirt sticking to my skin. I walked back to my bedroom. Behind me, I could hear laughter and dishes clanking. Life was going on like humiliating me was just another normal thing. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of my bed with water still dripping from my hair. I looked at my hands. They were shaking not because I was old but because I was so angry. I thought about the first time I held him as a tiny baby. He was so small and helpless. I promised to protect him and love him forever. And now that same baby had thrown water in my face because I asked for food. My chest felt tight, not from the water, but from the truth that something inside me had broken. When a mother's pride is cracked, it can't be fixed. I wiped my face with a towel, but I couldn't wipe away the memory. It was burned into my mind forever. I tried to sleep that night, but I couldn't. I lay in bed for hours staring at the ceiling, seeing the moment happen again and again in my mind. Each time I saw the water flying at me, my jaw got tighter. Each time I saw his mean eyes, my heart got colder. I knew then that all the years of being patient were over. I had lived through small acts of disrespect, hoping they would stop. I had accepted the mean words, the complaints, the lies that I was living off his charity. But this was different. This wasn't just disrespect. This was public humiliation. This was a message that said, "You are nothing." And that was the moment I decided I would show him who was really nothing. When I walked away from that lunch table and closed my bedroom door, the silence in that room was heavier than anything I had ever felt in my life. I sat on my bed with my shirt still wet and sticky. My skin felt cold from the water. I wiped my face slowly with my shaking hands. The humiliation stayed even after I dried off. The towel could take away the water, but it couldn't take away the feeling of being treated like I was worthless in front of my family. I looked at the small mirror on the wall, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. I saw a face with wrinkles from years of hard work. Eyes that were red not just from being old but from holding back tears. Lips pressed together so tight that no words could come out. I thought of every sacrifice that face had seen. Every scar, every wound that came from putting my son first. I thought of the times I went hungry and worked late nights just so my son could eat 3 meals a day. I thought about the cold winters when I walked in broken shoes while saving money to buy him a warm jacket. And all of it came rushing back to me as I sat there humiliated because he threw water on me for asking for soup. My heart felt cold. My body shook, not from the water, but from finally understanding that I had been blind for too long. That night, I could hear laughter from the other room. His wife was telling him something and he was chuckling like nothing had happened. My humiliation meant nothing to them. To them, it was just another normal day. To me, it was the night I buried the last piece of patience I had. I lay down on my bed and stared at the ceiling for hours. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it happen again. His arm reaching out, the glass tilting, the water splashing on my face. I felt the sting over and over. I thought about yelling and confronting him in front of everyone. But then I realized that yelling would make him happy. He wanted me to break down, to react, to show that I was weak. So I stayed silent. Silence became my weapon that night. Not because I accepted what happened, but because I was already planning how to turn it back on him. I told myself, this silence will not end in defeat. This silence will end in his defeat. I remembered how I built his life piece by piece. I remembered how much of my hard work and sacrifice went into the bank accounts and savings that had his name on them but were still under my control. He laughed at me like I was nothing. But the truth was, everything he thought belonged to him was actually mine. I realized that night that my silence would be my last silence of humiliation. From that moment on, it would become the silence of planning. I wiped my face one more time, But this time it wasn't with shame. It was with a calm decision. He thought he washed away my dignity with water. He had no idea that in doing that, he woke up something in me that had been sleeping for too long. My patience as a mother had been seen as weakness. But now my strength as a mother would return. I thought about how he would feel if one morning he woke up and realized the life he bragged about, the money he spent so carelessly, the power he thought he had, was all gone. I thought about his pride collapsing into panic, his confidence turning into fear. That thought gave me a small sense of peace. I didn't want revenge for many years. I wanted peace. But that night, I understood that peace for me could only come through justice. The quiet humiliation turned into quiet determination. I promised myself that this moment, this water on my face, would not be the end of my story. It would be the turning point. I lay back on the bed and let my breathing slow down. Outside, the family laughed and plates clattered. The night went on as if nothing had happened. But inside my room, something was being built in silence. Plan, a decision, a strength that nobody could see. My son thought he broke me. He thought the water made me powerless. But in reality, it was the biggest mistake he would ever make. From that night on, my silence was no longer the silence of weakness. It was the silence of a storm about to break. While I lay awake that night, I kept thinking about everything my son believed was his. He walked around the house acting like he owned it. He told neighbors he was the one providing for me. He spent money from accounts he thought belonged to him. What he forgot, or maybe never understood, was that I never gave up control. I put his name on the accounts so he could learn to be responsible with money. But I never took my name off. I never gave him full ownership. I never signed away my rights. The truth was simple. The house, the savings, the investments, every important thing was still legally in my name. He thought he was in charge because he had a bank card with his name on it. He thought joint accounts meant he was the master. But what he forgot was that those accounts were mine. I created them with years of hard work, but I allowed his name to sit next to mine only because I was generous and trusted him. If I wanted to, I could close those accounts in one day. If I wanted to, I could take every dollar out without asking him anything. He never knew that the real power never left my hands. I had simply been too trusting, too hopeful that he would value me, respect me, and treat me with kindness in my old age. I remembered the day we set up those accounts together. The bank worker had looked at me and asked, "Are you sure you want to put his name on this account too?" I smiled and said, "Yes, he is my son. I trust him." Those words felt like iron in my chest now. That trust had been paid back with water in my face. That trust had turned into humiliation. But that night, as I thought about everything again, I realized it was also my protection. My silence wasn't weakness. It was cover. Because while he thought he was humiliating a powerless old woman, the truth was that I still held every string of his life in my hands. What he forgot was that his future wasn't built by his hands but by mine. And at any moment I could take it all back. He had grown proud and mean. He had mocked me. He had said I was lucky to live in his house. But the house deed had my name on it. He said I was costing him money. But the accounts he bragged about were created by me and funded by me. He said I was nothing. But in reality, without me, he was nothing. That was the truth he had forgotten. I sat up in bed and thought about how he walked through life believing he was in control. I thought about how he had parties and told people he was secure and successful. How he showed off his bank card and acted like the money would never end. And all of it came from me. Every brick, every dollar, every bit of stability came from me. He built his pride on a foundation that was never his. That night, the humiliation started to turn into something sharper. I no longer felt like a victim. I started to feel like a woman holding a weapon nobody else knew about. My son had grown entitled, but entitlement only exists as long as the giver stays silent. I was done being silent. I reminded myself again and again. I still have the authority. I still have the rights. I still have the ownership. He thinks I'm just an old woman in a chair. But legally and financially, I'm the one holding all the cards. And if I decide to pull them away, His life will collapse overnight. This forgotten truth gave me strength. It calmed the shaking in my hands, turned my humiliation into fuel. He thought he had erased my dignity with one act. But I realized he had only given me a reason to act. I stayed in my room until morning, listening to the house become quiet, listening to them sleep peacefully, thinking their world was safe. But I knew something they didn't know. I knew that the world they were living in belonged to me, and I could take it away whenever I chose. That realization made me breathe easier. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't trapped. I wasn't weak. I wasn't at his mercy. It was the other way around. He was at mine. The forgotten truth was power, and soon he was going to learn it the hard way. The very next morning, I woke up with a clear mind and a decision burning inside me. I no longer felt like a woman humiliated by water. I felt like a woman holding the final card in a game my son didn't even know he was losing. I got dressed slowly, put on a clean dress, and ate a quiet breakfast by myself in the corner of the kitchen. He didn't even look at me that morning. He didn't say good morning to me, as if I was invisible. That made my decision even stronger. I walked back to my bedroom and took out the folder where I had kept all the bank papers, property documents, and account details. I had been keeping them safe for years because part of me always knew that trust can turn into betrayal. I looked at the papers and read through the names. I saw clearly what my next steps would be. The accounts were joint, but I had full authority as the main account holder. The house was in my name only. The investments were under my name. He believed everything was his, but on paper it was mine. That was my weapon. That was my plan. I picked up my phone and called the bank manager. He had known me for many years and had seen me put money in the bank month after month. I spoke calmly and asked him to check the accounts and confirm once more who had the authority to move the money. He confirmed what I already knew. Only me. My son had access to see the money, but no rights to control it. His name was there for convenience, not ownership. The power was in my hands. I told the bank manager I wanted to come in that afternoon for an appointment. He gave me a time. I packed my documents into a bag and got ready. At lunch, I sat at the table quietly, not saying a word, watching my son laugh with his wife like life was perfect. He didn't know that by evening, his life would start falling apart. I didn't argue with him. I didn't confront him. I stayed silent because the real battle wasn't going to be fought with words. It was going to be fought with signatures and bank transfers. In the afternoon I went to the bank. The manager greeted me kindly, and I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted every dollar in those accounts moved into a new private account under my name only. No shared access, no joint control, nothing. Completely mine. He looked surprised but nodded. "It's your right," he said. I signed the papers. Page after page, line after line. I erased my son from the financial world he thought was his kingdom. By the time I left that office, $2.8 million had been moved into an account he would never touch again. His name was removed from the accounts. His access card was cancelled. The money he bragged about, the savings he showed off, the future he believed was secure, was gone in one afternoon. I walked out of that bank feeling lighter than I had felt in years. My humiliation was no longer an open wound. It was a closed chapter. I had turned it into action. The plan was working, but I wasn't finished yet. That evening when I got home, he was sitting on the couch watching television and laughing with his wife. He didn't even notice the change in my face. He didn't know that I had just taken away everything from him. I sat down quietly, drank a glass of water, and kept my silence. I didn't say a word because the plan wasn't about confrontation. It was about watching his pride collapse on its own. I went to my room and packed some clothes into a small suitcase. I took my passport, my medicines, and my important papers. I went online and booked a ticket to fly away. One way, to a place far overseas where I could start fresh. A place far from his meanness. He wouldn't see it coming. He would wake up one morning and find his cards not working, his accounts empty, his world crumbling, and I would already be gone. I looked around the room one last time and felt no sadness. This wasn't my home anymore. This was my prison. And I was about to walk free. The plan was simple but final. Take everything back, leave without a word, and let him understand in silence. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. The water he threw on my face had dried, but the stain on his character would never wash away. He had mocked me for asking for more soup. Soon he would be struggling for every coin, and I wouldn't be there to hear him beg. That was my plan, and it was already happening. Once the money transfer was done and the accounts were secure, I knew the next step had to be quick and quiet. I couldn't give him even a small chance to figure out what was happening. If he noticed even the smallest sign, he would try to stop me, argue with me, or maybe even try to force me to stay. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I moved carefully, like a woman preparing for a journey nobody else should know about. I pulled out my old suitcase, the same one I used years ago when I traveled to visit my sister, and I started to pack. I didn't take much, only what I needed. A few dresses, my passport, my medicines, my personal papers, and a few photographs I wanted to keep. Everything else I left behind. I didn't want to carry weight. I wanted freedom. I folded my clothes carefully, tucked the papers into a hidden pocket inside the suitcase, and zipped it closed. Then I sat on the bed for a moment, staring at the room that had been mine but never truly felt like mine. It was supposed to be my place to rest in my old age, but it had become a cage. I felt no sadness leaving it behind. If anything, I felt relief. I checked my phone and looked at the flight booking I had made the night before. A one-way ticket to another country far away. I chose a place near the ocean where nobody would look for me. A quiet town where nobody would know my son's name or my pain. I arranged for the flight to leave in 2 days. Enough time to prepare, but not enough time for anyone to notice what I was doing. During those 2 days, I kept my behavior completely normal. I ate my meals quietly. I sat in the living room when needed, and I stayed out of their way. My son made fun of me one more time for being so quiet, saying, "The old woman has nothing to say anymore." I smiled inside because he had no idea that soon he would have everything to say and nothing left to hold on to. I took out small amounts of cash from different bank branches so nobody would get suspicious. I kept doing this until I had enough money in my hands to take with me. I sent an email to my lawyer, telling him to prepare a sealed letter to give to my son after I left. I told him not to tell anyone where I went. The letter would only say that my decision was final. The lawyer agreed and promised to do what I asked. On the final night before I left, I barely slept. I lay awake listening to the sounds of the house. The floor creaking, the laughter from the television in the other room. I felt a strange calmness. I knew this was the last night I would ever hear those sounds. At dawn I got dressed, picked up my suitcase, and walked out of the house without making a sound. Nobody noticed me leave. My son was sleeping. His wife was snoring next to him. The children were lost in their dreams. I stepped outside into the cool morning air and felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The street was quiet and the sky was slowly turning light. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking as a free woman. I called a taxi and went straight to the airport. The ride was long, but I didn't look back once. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, watching the city fade into the distance, knowing I was erasing myself from their lives. At the airport, I moved through the process calmly. I checked my bag, showed my passport, and waited at the gate. Around me were families and couples and travelers excited about vacations. But I sat quietly, a woman leaving not for fun, but for justice. When my flight was called, I walked down the tunnel with steady steps. I sat in my seat, put on the safety belt, and looked out the window as the plane started to move. When it lifted off the ground, I felt the final chain break. I was gone. My son would wake up and find nothing. No mother, no money, no foundation. His kingdom built on pride had collapsed overnight. I imagined his face when he tried to use his bank card and it didn't work. I imagined the panic in his voice when he called the bank and they told him he had no rights left. I imagined him running through the house, searching for me, only to find my room empty, my things gone, and only silence in the air. That was my disappearance. Not loud, not violent, but complete. I left without a trace, without a phone number, without a clue. I erased myself from his world the same way he tried to erase my dignity. While the plane cut through the clouds, I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. I was no longer humiliated. I was no longer the old woman mocked at the lunch table. I was a woman who had taken back what was hers and disappeared before anyone could stop her. That was the beginning of my new life and the end of his. The morning I disappeared, my son woke up thinking it was just another normal day. He walked into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and started talking loudly to his wife about bills he planned to pay and things he wanted to buy on the weekend. He reached into his wallet, pulled out his bank card, and told her he would handle the payments after breakfast. He tried to check his account on his phone, and that's when his smile disappeared. The screen showed an error message. He tried again, typing harder, his eyebrows coming together in confusion. Still the same message. He laughed nervously, thinking maybe the app was broken. But when he tried to use his other card to pay a bill online, the card was declined. He tried again and again, getting more frustrated each time. His wife looked at him confused, asking what was wrong, and he brushed her off, saying it was just a bank error. But inside, panic was starting to grow. He picked up his phone and called the bank. The line connected, and after answering security questions, the bank worker told him calmly that the account he was trying to use no longer had his name on it. The rights were taken away, the cards were cancelled, and his access was permanently removed. My son's voice got louder, demanding answers, saying there must be a mistake. But the bank worker repeated the same words. He had no rights, no access, no control. The accounts were only under my name now, and the money transfers had already been completed. The money was gone. His voice cracked with anger as he shouted into the phone, but no amount of shouting could change the bank system. He hung up and called again, hoping to talk to someone else, but the answer was the same every time. He was powerless. By now, his wife was getting nervous, asking what he meant by gone. He tried to lie, saying it was just a temporary problem, but she kept asking more questions, and his silence told her the truth. His pride from the day before had vanished. His face turned pale, his hands shook, and he realized that everything he thought was his, the savings, the security, the future, had disappeared overnight. He ran through the house shouting my name, looking for me. But when he opened my bedroom door, he found only an empty bed, bare shelves, and the quiet sound of nothing. My suitcase was gone, my papers were gone, my presence was gone. That silence was the loudest punishment of all. He called my phone over and over, but I had already turned it off and thrown away the SIM card. He sent message after message, his words changing from anger to panic to begging. First he wrote, "What did you do?" Then, "You can't do this to me." And later, "Please mother, let's talk." But none of those words reached me. I had already cut that line of connection. His wife stood in the kitchen staring at him in shock, realizing that the man who had bragged about being in control had nothing left. The children watched him walking back and forth, yelling, then sitting in a chair with his head in his hands. For the first time they saw their father powerless. For the first time they saw fear in his eyes. He tried driving to the bank and demanded to speak to the manager, but the bank stood firm. They showed him the papers I had signed. Legally he was nothing. He walked out of that bank like a shadow of the man who used to walk in with confidence. His pride had no ground to stand on anymore. The calls he made to friends went unanswered once they realized he couldn't pay back what he owed them. The bills started piling up with no money to pay them. The lifestyle he had shown off started falling apart piece by piece. His wife grew cold toward him, asking why he lied to her, why he made her believe they were secure when in truth everything had come from me. The arguments between them got louder each night, and the neighbors started whispering. The man who once mocked his mother for asking for food was now struggling to figure out how to feed his own family. The panic turned into shame, and the shame turned into silence. The humiliation he gave me at that lunch table came back to him 10 times stronger. The result of my leaving was not just the loss of money. It was the loss of his image, his pride, his power, and his control. He learned that a man who throws water at his mother should be ready to have his future washed away. He thought I was weak. He thought I was old and useless. But when the truth crashed down on him, he was the one left with nothing. That was the result of what he did. His pride burned to ashes, his family shaken, his future erased, and my silence louder than any angry words I could have said. Weeks went by after I disappeared, and my son's life kept falling apart bit by bit. His pride had been replaced with desperation. His phone calls to me went unanswered. His messages were never read. His attempts to find me all failed. He went to relatives asking if they had seen me, but nobody knew anything because I had told nobody. His wife grew colder every day, blaming him for the disaster. And his children started to understand that the security they once had was gone. The man who used to walk with pride now walked with bent shoulders, head down and eyes full of worry. But I wasn't finished. I wanted one final move, not with money or property, but with words that would cut deeper than anything else. That's why I had made arrangements with my lawyer before leaving. I had given him a sealed envelope to deliver to my son weeks after I disappeared. Inside was a single note. My lawyer waited, watching as the chaos grew, until the right time came. Then one afternoon, as my son sat in his living room surrounded by unpaid bills, his wife angry and his children quiet, there was a knock on the door. He opened it to find the lawyer standing there with an envelope. My son looked confused and asked what it was. The lawyer simply said, "From your mother." My son's hands shook as he opened it. The letter inside was short, only 2 sentences written in my handwriting. It said, "You threw water on my face. I took away the life you thought was yours." That was all. No signature, no address where he could find me, nothing else. Just those final words. My son read the words again and again, his face changing from anger to disbelief to sadness. His wife looked over his shoulder, read it too, and walked away without saying anything. The silence in that room was heavier than anything he had ever felt before. He understood in that moment that this wasn't a mistake or a temporary punishment. This was the permanent result of his actions. He tried to call the lawyer back, demanding to know where I was, but the lawyer simply repeated what I had told him to say. "Your mother made her decision. That's all you need to know." My son shouted, begged, and threatened, but nothing worked. The lawyer left, and my son stood alone in the doorway holding the paper that ended his world. That small note was more powerful than any confrontation could have been. It reminded him of the night he humiliated me, of the moment he thought I was powerless, and it showed him how wrong he had been. He understood that respect cannot be bought, and once it's lost, it cannot come back. He understood that his mother was not weak or helpless, but the very foundation he had stood on. And when that foundation was removed, he had nothing left to stand on. He kept the note, maybe hoping that one day I would come back, but I never would. That message was the last connection between us. A reminder, a punishment, and a truth carved into his mind forever. After I sent that final message through my lawyer, I closed the last chapter of my life with my son. I didn't check for any replies. I didn't ask for updates. I didn't want to hear about his struggles directly. My justice wasn't about watching him cry or beg. My justice was about making sure he understood that he had destroyed the very bridge that carried him through life. And now he would have to face the emptiness alone. I started my new life in a quiet town by the ocean in a country far away from the house where I had been humiliated. Here nobody knew my name. Nobody knew my past. Nobody called me a burden. I rented a small apartment near the beach. It was simple but peaceful. In the mornings I walked along the shore, breathing in the salty air, feeling the sand under my feet, and listening to the waves crash against the rocks. Each step reminded me that I was free, that I had taken back my dignity. In the afternoons I sat at a small cafe with a newspaper, drinking tea slowly, not worrying about anyone making fun of me or rushing me. At night I cooked simple meals. Small portions that I enjoyed without anyone counting how much I ate or rolling their eyes at me. Life became quiet, but it was a quiet that healed me instead of hurting me. Sometimes I thought about my son, and I wondered if he still tried to explain to his wife where everything went, or if he still looked at that note with anger or regret. But those thoughts no longer hurt me. They reminded me of my justice. He had thrown water on me, trying to wash away my dignity in front of his family. But in return, I had washed away his future with the signing of papers. He had forgotten that everything he had came from me, and I made sure he remembered it in the harshest way possible. My lawyer wrote to me once, not with details, but with confirmation that my instructions had been followed completely. There was nothing left for my son to claim. The accounts were mine. The house ownership had been transferred. The investments were secured. My son was left with only his pride. And pride cannot feed a family. That was his punishment. My justice was not about shouting or fighting or physical violence. It was about silence, legal papers, and finality. Justice for me was not seeing him suffer directly. It was knowing he could no longer control me, no longer humiliate me, no longer pretend he was the master of what I built. Justice was walking along the sea with no weight on my shoulders. Justice was knowing that when he looked at his empty bank account, he would remember that moment at the lunch table for the rest of his life. He would remember the water. He would remember my silence. And he would understand too late that his mother was never powerless. In the end, he lost everything because he couldn't give the smallest thing: respect. As I sit here now in my peaceful apartment by the sea, I sometimes think about the lessons life has taught me. I learned that giving too much without teaching gratitude creates entitlement. I learned that silence can be more powerful than shouting. I learned that a mother's love should never be mistaken for weakness. I learned that legal documents and signatures hold more power than empty words. I learned that walking away from toxicity, even from family, is sometimes the only way to save yourself. My new life isn't fancy or expensive. I live simply. I have enough money to take care of myself comfortably. I spend my days reading books, walking by the ocean, and talking to new friends I've made in this town. They know me as a kind grandmother figure, and they treat me with the respect I always deserved. Nobody here knows about my past. Nobody knows about the water thrown in my face or the millions I took back. They just know me as a peaceful woman who smiles often and loves watching the sunset. That's enough for me. Sometimes at night, when I sit on my small balcony looking at the stars, I feel a deep sense of peace. Not because I hurt my son, but because I finally stood up for myself. 4 years I had bent and bent and bent, hoping that my flexibility would be seen as strength, hoping that my patience would be rewarded with love. But I was wrong. Some people will take and take and take until you have nothing left. And when that happens, you have 2 choices: stay and be destroyed, or leave and rebuild. I chose to leave and rebuild. Chose myself. I don't regret my decision. Some people might say a mother should forgive everything. Some might say family is family no matter what. But I learned that family is not just about blood. Family is about respect, kindness, and mutual care. When those things disappear, the title of family becomes meaningless. My son had a choice every single day to treat me with dignity. He chose cruelty instead. He chose mockery instead. He chose humiliation instead. And when the consequences came, he had nobody to blame but himself. I hope that wherever he is now, he has learned something. I hope he has learned to treat people, especially his elders, with respect. I hope he has learned that money and security can disappear in an instant if you don't appreciate where they came from. I hope he has learned that his children were watching him, and they learned from his behavior. If he treats them the way he treated me, one day they might do the same to him. That would be the ultimate lesson. But whether he learned or not is no longer my concern. I did my part as a mother. I gave him everything. I sacrificed my youth, my health, my money, my dreams, all for him. But I refused to sacrifice my dignity. That was the line I finally drew. To anyone listening to this story, especially those who are being mistreated by their own children or family members. I want you to know this. You are not powerless. You are not a burden. You do not deserve to be humiliated. Age does not make you less valuable. The sacrifices you made were real and important. And you have every right to protect yourself, even if that means walking away from people who share your blood. Don't wait until you have nothing left. Don't wait until your spirit is completely broken. If you have the means to leave, if you have the legal right to take back what's yours, if you have the strength to start over, then do it. Life is too short to spend your final years being someone's servant or punching bag. Your peace matters. Your dignity matters. You matter. My story isn't a story of revenge. It's a story of justice and self-respect. It's a story of a mother who finally said, enough, and meant it. It's a story of reclaiming power that was always mine but that I had forgotten I had. If my son ever hears this story somehow, I want him to know this. I don't hate you. I'm not sitting here filled with anger or bitterness. But I also don't regret what I did. You taught me that love without respect is worthless. You taught me that giving everything doesn't guarantee receiving anything. You taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions. Hope you're okay. I hope your children are okay. I hope you've found a way to survive. But I also hope you remember that glass of water every single day. I hope you remember my wet face and my silence. I hope it haunts you just enough to make you a better person. Because that's what real consequences do. They change us. To everyone watching this on Granny's Voice, thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for not judging me. Thank you for understanding that sometimes walking away is the strongest thing you can do. If you learned something from my story, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. If you're going through something similar, please know you're not alone. There are many of us who had to make impossible choices between family and self-preservation. And we chose ourselves. And that's okay. As I end this story, I'm sitting on my balcony watching the sun set over the ocean. The sky is painted in shades of orange and pink. The air is cool and fresh. I have a cup of tea in my hands. And I am at peace. Real deep, honest peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop carrying weight that was never yours to carry. The kind of peace that comes when you choose your dignity over someone else's comfort. The kind of peace that comes when you realize that being alone is better than being disrespected. This is my story. A story of sacrifice, betrayal, justice, and ultimately freedom. A story of a mother who loved too much, gave too much, and finally took back what was hers. A story that I hope reminds you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to choose peace. It's never too late to start over. Thank you for watching Granny's Voice. May you always walk with dignity, may you always know your worth, and may you never let anyone, not even family, throw water on your spirit. Until next time, this is your Granny, signing off from somewhere peaceful, somewhere free, somewhere far away from those who couldn't see my value. Take care of yourselves. And remember, you are stronger than you think.